This is not a test. Stay calm in an orderly fashion. Make your way to the lifeboats.
Mayday, the ship is sinking.
All right, so welcome back, everybody, to Lifeboat Addiction Recovery Cast. This is Wednesday's podcast, which means we are going to be talking about meditations today. We are going to kind of continue a little bit along the lines of the conversation we were having last week on last week's meditation. We are going to be, the primary focus today is going to be talking about fear of the unknown, because that was something that came up, and it was just something we both kind of recognized of like this. We should just do an entire podcast on this. But before we do that, as always, I'm joined by my co-host, my friend, and my employee, Hunter Taylor. How you doing, man?
Friends is a strong word, but employee, I'll go with that. No, I'm doing pretty good. I'm really tired today. It's still sticking to the schedule, getting up early. We worked a lot yesterday, and brain's just kind of feeling it a little bit. But all in all, I'm doing really good. I'm grateful to be here. I went to a great meeting last night. It was a lot of good sharing going on. The reading was really good, so I really enjoyed that, and it kind of lifted my spirits a little bit. So yeah, I mean, I'm doing well. Really, no complaints from me. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing pretty good. Didn't sleep great last night, but par for the course. Got a new baby, got a 2-month-old, and he likes to be fussing and a bussing. So I live in a very old house. It's a very nice house, but it's an older house, 120 years old. It's
Wow.
one of the older houses in Mason. And the problem with that is we have no central air conditioning. So it was a bajillion degrees in my room last night. So I had to go effectively. I bought an air conditioning unit last summer, because if you know anything about Michigan summers, they get ridiculously hot. And it's not the fun kind of hot either, like, a desert heat where it feels like you're kind of in an oven. It's instead a humid heat, which means like you're in a sauna, and it is ridiculous and it sticks to you. So I had to go put in that air conditioner last night. So that was fun. And little man seemed to, quiet down a little bit. He was real angry last night. You could tell he was really hot. We had to take all of his clothes off, and he's just like, oh, miserable. But he ended up calming down, and everything was fine, great, and otherwise. So other than that, man, things are going fairly well. I'm moving along slowly but surely.
Good stuff. Good stuff. So I always find it funny when people from Michigan talk about the hot, humid weather we have up here, and I'm like, you don't know hot, humid weather.
Yeah, fair enough. I live in like New Orleans.
Well, no, Iowa is actually
Iowa.
So it's like an intercoastal humidity climate or something is what it's classified as, and it's just super, super humid. I've always heard that the agriculture has a lot to do with it too. We have a lot of corn there, a lot of soybeans and stuff like that, and it gets so bad during the summer. I moved down here up here, and everyone's telling me like, man, it's gonna be so cold, the weather's gonna be terrible and all this, and I came down here and I'm like, this is way better.
Yeah,
this
is
like
not too bad. We get mild. Our summers, like when it gets really hot, it's gross.
Right.
Like it's sticky. But for the most part, we have mild weather. Like the two, we have a really long summer. We have a ridiculously long winter. But our spring and fall are very palatable and nice.
Well, it's spring right now. It's like 80 degrees outside, so I don't know about that, but
Well, I mean, yeah, and the problem with our springs is they, as with all things, the spring is the middle point really between summer and winter, our two major seasons here in Michigan. And what you end up seeing is this consistent fluctuation. Like that's the funny part about Michigan. You don't like the weather, wait 20 minutes, and it's so true. We have days. I don't know what the record swing is, but as long as I've lived in Michigan, which has been all of my life, I think the biggest swing that I've seen is about 50 to 60 degrees, where it's like summer out or whatever may have you. And then by the end of the day, it's almost snowing.
And somehow you guys don't get tornadoes. It's weird to me.
Well, I think a lot of that is, we could go on for hours about, we have the Great Lakes and that changes like the climate. But we are usually in the middle ground between the two nastiest. We get the polar vortexes, and you were here, 2-3 years ago, the polar vortex where it dropped below like -40.
I got stuck in Chicago. So that was all across the Midwest. But yeah, I got stuck in Chicago. I was taking a train back, and the tracks froze. So they had to close out all the trains, and it was on the news, like they set the tracks on fire apparently to melt them. They actually Yeah, but anyways, thank you for tuning into Lifeboat. addiction recovery / weathercast.
Yes.
So this is where we talk about the forecast for the week, right?
Yeah, right. No, so we were talking last week on Wednesday about just a lot of different stuff. And one of the things that really popped up, I think, in the midst of the conversation was the fear of the unknown. And I thought, let's save that. Let's say, because I think it popped up right towards, like the 15 minutes until we're finished marker. So it was like, we need to save an entire podcast for this. So fear of the unknown, go.
All right. It's a fear and it's of the unknown.
It's of the unknown.
I mean, it's been dominant in my life, man. I know when I always go back to my active addiction when I think about things like starting off, because it's really where my self-awareness kind of sprung from. That's mostly where I studied in my life. And, I look a lot at my childhood too, but a lot at my active addiction. And I had a massive fear to quit using. So it was even when I was just smoking weed, I knew that like I probably shouldn't be doing that because I saw how it was hindering me and stuff. I mean, even at the young age, I started when I was 14. Then awareness probably came when I was around 15 or so, like after I'd been doing it for a while and stuff, and was getting more like around the people, starting to do more stuff, starting to get more and more out there. And I just was like scared because I'm like, what is life without weed? And then with meth, it was the same thing. Like, what is life without drugs at that point? Because at that point, I was doing about anything I could get my hands on. So it was like, what is life without the use of drugs? It doesn't make sense to me. That was actually in my active addiction. That was one of the things that kept me from wanting to get out of it, because I saw people, and it talks about this in the NA literature, which everything about my addiction seems to be in that book, which is kind of cool to me. But it says that we like often thought that people who were sober were boring, and there was some other stuff in there too, but it's like, and it turns out it was just the opposite, So it was this thought of like, what is there to do? And then when I was in rehab, I had the same thought. I was like, I kind of cried out, I'm a spiritual person. So I was praying and kind of cried out. I was like, I've done drugs since I was 14 years old. I've sold drugs since I was 15. Like, what do I do? It's like, what could you possibly have for me to do? Because I'm like, I don't know what normal people do. I don't know how to function in society. I don't know how to do any of this. All I know is how to do drugs. I couldn't hold down a job, didn't know anything about like renting an apartment or anything like that. Like I did not know anything about adult responsibilities or living life. And it was scary, man. It's scary, like coming into a world that you know nothing about. It's scary coming into learn everything over again in the right way, because as it also says in the literature of NA, I'm just going to keep bringing up NA literature, but it says like we became proud of our bizarre and oftentimes illegal behavior. And that's what encompassed my life, was bizarre and oftentimes illegal behavior. And that's stuff that I can't really do in recovery. It's still bizarre, don't get me wrong, but I don't do illegal things.
Yeah, it's not illegal. It's just weird.
Right. Exactly. Unethical, maybe.
Yeah, right. No, I completely agree with you. I've always, and especially quite a bit as of lately, I've seen the two parallel universes that coexist with each other and inside of our culture, predominantly in Western culture, but I'm sure it happens in other places too. Which you have this addiction culture, which it's a culture. It legitimately, they speak a different language. They talk about things differently. They think in a different way. They're the morals, ethics, and everything about, any form of ethical behavior is foregone inside of the midst of that specific culture. And it's like, ethics are arbitrary a lot of times in addictions. I have seldom, if ever, found somebody who is in active addiction who actually had legitimate ethics that they held to. Now, they may profess it. They may say, I'm not going to do that. It's against my ethics. But it's like, if given the right circumstances, they will breach that gap. They will certainly, it's like, if given the right circumstances, if given the right opportunity, they'll breach the gap. Versus in the counterculture to that, which is recovery and abstinence and sustainability, it's often at a time where it's like, okay, well, we're not going to, we do have a set form of ethics, we have a set form of language, we do not take part in that kind of stuff. There's certain ways to interact with each other inside of this, and I see that so often inside of addiction in particular, of people just don't understand that they're afraid of something because they don't. I personally think a lot of times the fear strands from success. They're afraid that if they try and they fail, they'll fail. Or if they
Fear of
try,
rejection.
they if they try, they won't be able to participate. If they try, they won't be able to truly do what everybody else is doing. And instead of taking that first step and actively trying, they just said, no, I'm not going to do it. No,
Yeah.
I'm not even going to take the first step because I'll fail. And I see too many people get into that place, and it's sad. Because I think it's like, well, I don't think you're going to fail outright, but I think that there's an opportunity on the table.
Right. Yeah, I think there's that fear of failure permeates a lot into that. Like it kind of goes together with the fear of the unknown a lot of the times, because it's like, you don't know if I'm going to succeed or I'm going to fail, but I'm probably going to fail. I know it was scary for me, you know, like one of my biggest fear today is one of my biggest fears. I hate spiders and so on, but no, I'm scared of relapsing, man. And like, I'm scared of getting a long time clean and then slipping up. And it's just a fear I have, you know, it's that fear of failure. Like, what if I put all this work in, you know, and I do all this stuff just to go back out, you know, and like, obviously that's just me telling myself stuff. Cause like, I know that if I keep working, that's not going to happen. If I continue on the right path, if I stay around the right people and I stay plugged into my supports. And I also know if I do relapse that I can get right back on it. It's not like I lost everything that I've learned or everything that I've gained in that time. You know, obviously some hiccups would happen from that, but it's just a fear I have, man. It's like, it's scary. You know, it's like, I see people come to meetings, they got like 10 years clean and then they slip up, and it's like,
Yeah, man.
it scares me.
That's the one right there, I believe, is one of the biggest fears for me. And it's one of the biggest eye openers is when you do go to a meeting or you do run across the path of somebody who has a significant, what I would consider, you know, a significant amount of clean time, really 5 years on and in a decade, even furthermore,
Right.
you know, and then they go out and slip up. And you know, I can make all the justifications of the world. Oh, they weren't working a program, they weren't doing the right thing. And they very well may not have been, but
Right.
ultimately it's like, it shows you how quickly that can slip. It shows you that given the right set of circumstances on the right day at the right time, you could throw all of this away. And let me preface that because, you know, I don't think if you were to go out and relapse and then you immediately got back on the proverbial wagon, I don't think you've slipped up. You know, I'm a part of this group on Facebook. I'm not going to out what the group is, but one of the things that's somewhat disheartening to me, and I check it in on it, you know, weekly, we post our podcast on this Facebook page weekly. And and it's a big Facebook page. It's got like 20,000 people in it. And one of the things that happens so often is I'll be scrolling through a Facebook feed and I'll see somebody say, I'm so ashamed of myself. I got 6 months clean and then I threw it all away. Or I'm so ashamed of myself. I got, you know, a couple of weeks clean and I threw it all away. And what I immediately all of a sudden like turn into a recovery coach.
Right.
And just go for it and be like, first off, you didn't throw it all away.
Right.
Like it's a fallacy. That
Right.
is not true.
And
And
clean date reset.
you're clean.
That's it.
That is it.
That's it.
Like that's it. The moment that you get into the mentality of I have thrown everything away is the moment that you're going to be in a world of hurt. And even furthermore, you're going to use that as evidence to justify continued use.
Yeah. And I want to preface too, you know, because I don't want people to start thinking the wrong thing and thinking like, oh, I can go back out and just use once and nothing's going to go away.
No.
You're playing with fire. Because like I've seen a lot of people that go out and they do not make it back, either because they die or because they just go back out and they start this proverbial what we call chronic relapsing. And it's just over and over and over and over
Yep.
again. It's like, or they stay out for longer periods of time. And that's where you start to lose everything you've worked for. You know,
Yes.
like you still have that knowledge that doesn't go away. You still have the fellowship that you built when you go back. Those people who are still there are probably still going to accept you back in. You know, I've never met anyone who hasn't.
Mm-hmm.
But you might lose your house, you might
Yeah.
lose your apartment, you might damage what you've been building and stuff like that. So
There's going to be consequences.
Right.
There will be consequences for use. Make no mistake. But the problem always, you know, play the tape all the way through. It's like consequences for use. You know, at any given moment, you need to play the tape all the way through because it's like before you even pick up the first drug, play the tape all the way through. After you may have used the first drug because you played the tape all the way through and you thought it was still a good idea, continue to play the tape all the way through. Now you've now created, you know, a new dimension to what's happening here. You know, I would rather have somebody not use it all, obviously, but I would rather have somebody, if they decided to use again and lapse back into it, come immediately back into the fold, say that was a bad idea. I'm not going to do it again. Let's keep going.
I had a client like that fell out the wagon, you know, and it was tough because they were doing really good in their recovery. I mean, they were participating in their recovery. They were improving physical health. They were doing the right things to like sustain recovery. One bad decision. That's all it took.
All it takes.
One bad decision, went back out, and I think was out there for not long at all, like maybe a week or two, checked themselves into detox, went back into the program they were in before, and is working on it again. It's like, that's good.
That's the exact thing you need to do.
Right. It was an immediate turnaround. It was just something clicked. I also got another friend right now. Well, kind of a friend, more of an acquaintance. Like, I know them from the fellowships, and over 2 years clean. A lot of stuff going for him. Had made some significant strides in their recovery, and went back out.
Yeah.
And I just found out about it yesterday, and it's like, I didn't see that coming. And it's sad. And I hope they do make it back like that. But it's a scary thing when you see someone, when you see someone you knew, and like they actually had significant clean time. Cause like, I mean, I consider significant anything over like 3 months. Cause that's usually like, if we're going to see a primary of that percentage fall off in that first year, it's during the first 3 months. That's typically when substance abuse relapse occurs. So after 3 months clean, you now have passed the hardest point. You would now have sustained recovery in my eyes.
Yes. And it's something that continues to need to be fostered. But I think, the fear is going to be a natural portion of what you have to deal with in early recovery, and even in later recovery. The fear is going to continue to change. It's going to be different. In early, before you stop using, the fear of the unknown. I don't think I'm going to be able to be successful. What if I fail? All that kind of stuff. And it's like, let me give a news flash for you, because this is going to be this is the reality. And I think I said this to you, or something akin to this to you, when we first started, working with each other and really meeting with each other in that mentee-mentor relationship and dynamic, is you are going to fail. End of sentence. You will fail. But it's how you interact with that failure. It's how you continue to press forward regardless and in spite of that failure that is going to end up making the character who you want to be, especially in early recovery. You're going to try, you're going to fail a lot. You're going to be successful a lot. It is something that's going to go back and forth. But the most important thing that you do is the biggest decision that you make between using and not using, that's something you don't want to fail on. Stop using. Okay. Then everything else outside of that, it's like, there's going to be a lot of unknowns, and you're going to have to retrain yourself, and you're going to have to relearn, and you're going to possibly have to learn for the first time a lot of different things. And guess what? There's going to be a lot of trial and error. There will be a lot of failure in those things. Failure is okay, though. It's how you interact with it. That's really important, because you can let failure train you as to, okay, why did I fail? And this is important for anybody that, whether you're in short-term or long-term recovery. If you fail, how you interact with it, how you break it down. Why did it happen? How do I make sure it doesn't happen again? Was I underprepared? Did I not do the right thing? We've talked about Jordan Peterson a lot, but the interesting thing that he talks about specifically related to college students is, you have college students that they get into college, they just kind of party their way through, yada, yada, yada. And then they end up failing this test. And then they feel like, whoa, the chaos has just manifested itself in my life, and what do I do now? Well, okay, let's take a look at what you did in the run up to that test. Did you study? No. Or did you study enough? No. Did you read the literature that you were supposed to read? No. Did you do the things? Did you go to class on time, pay attention, sit in the front seat, all that kind of stuff? No. Okay. Incrementally change those things. Right. So start going to class. That's a great thing. If you're in college, you start showing up to class. Okay. Then if there's assigned reading or homework, do the assigned reading or homework. And I'm not saying you got to do it, 100%. And if you don't, you get 98%, you're a failure, but do that. Start slowly but surely changing these things. In the same exact principle, it goes straight into early recovery, where it's like, you're going to do things that are not going to be successful. You're going to go apply for a job and you won't be able to get the job because you don't have the qualifications. Well, you really want the job. What do you need to do to get the qualifications to get the job? So it's this constant dance that you have to deal with. Fear of the unknown, then yes, you're going to fail, but how do you interact with it?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I feel like the failure is kind of just a part of it's life in general, right? Recovery or not. It's like, we're all going to face failure. It's like, do we become crippled by the fear of that failure, or do we move forward? There's a quotation in one of my lessons that I teach, and I'm going to probably miss a couple words here, but it says something along the lines, and the trouble is if you risk nothing, you risk even more.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and like then, you know, there's the other ones like you miss every shot you don't take, things like that. You know, it's like if you don't risk anything, if you don't risk that fear of rejection, that fear of failure, the fear of the unknown, you grow nowhere. It's like Jordan Peterson talks about, once again, Jordan Peterson coming up, but like the order and chaos. You know, if you're completely in order, you grow complacent, you grow stagnant, you don't go anywhere with your life. And it's a scary thing. It's a scary place to be. That's more scary to me than being or unknown, honestly. Like I'd rather move forward. Like, I mean, the job I work at now, when I first came into this field, I'd never worked in a professional field.
Yep.
I've worked at retail, gas stations. I've had a lot of jobs, I guess, but you know, like just retail, gas stations, and kitchens. That was like my primarily where I worked at. I've never worked in anything close to this type of professional field. And it was unknown to me. You know, I was like, I have to go through a training to get this job.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, there's a lot of things. And I'm like, man, this is kind of weird. I'm working under a clinician, you know, I'm working with trained professionals, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a high level of ethics here. Like in the kitchen, there's no ethics. You know what I'm saying? I stabbed my cousin one time on accident.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting story. I stabbed him in the hand. It wasn't like intentional,
Yeah.
but you know, like,
shiv him, like, you know, cut the cabbage better next time.
yeah, exactly. It was an accident though, but yeah, no, actually it was pretty bad. But like, and you know, we cuss and we do drugs and we, you know, flirt with the waitresses, whatever it might be, you know, it's like, that's like going from that sort of environment into an environment of professionalism. It's a very big change, you know, and it was very unknown to me. But if I didn't do that, I wouldn't be anywhere where I am today. I mean, you've even seen me like grow substantially through the job. Like, I guess just through life in general and further on in my recovery. But this job has been a major conduit for that. I think that's the right word, conduit, you know, something like that.
Well, and I think a lot of that goes right back into you have when you started this job, you had a lot of responsibility. All of a sudden you had responsibility for other people. You had a responsibility to yourself. You had a responsibility to your agency.
Mm-hmm.
And inside of that responsibility, there were a lot of avenues that you're even grappling with today that you had to stay focused on, data input being one of them, you know, how to correctly do intakes, how to correctly do all this kind of stuff. And it's okay. You know, and they've done just a mountain of studies. There's been messes of literature published on this, and it's really, really big inside of the corporate and professional realm right now. And most business schools are starting to teach this, that by and large, the 10% of the most successful people in our society all are different, but have one similar characteristic. And it goes by many names. It can go by grit. It can go by fortitude. It can go by a bunch of different names, but it's in essence the ability to continue to pick yourself up in spite of failure, the ability to continue going and moving forward, even though there are hiccups in the road that do not go according to plan. And that is something that you must instill in yourself in early recovery and even in later forms of recovery. Ultimately, there will be bumps in the road you can't plan for. Ultimately, there will be things that happen. If you decide to get upset and go use about it because it was easier, you will not progress forward. But if you decide to say, well, that was a thing, and I'm going to have to integrate that in how I approach future endeavors, but I'm not going to let that put me down, and I continue to go, you will eventually be successful. Right. And that's something, you know, it's unfortunate that we are inundated consistently with, especially in today's day and age, we're inundated with these young millennials, these young 20 and 30-year-olds that are unbelievably successful, making, you know, 8-9 figures a year, selling companies for $1 billion. And they're like, they got a one-off in this one snap where like they designed a program, they sold the program to Google, or they sold the program to Facebook, or they invented Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg, or something like that. And people think like, well, if I can just get that idea, if I can do that one thing, then I'll be successful. And it's like, for the greater proportion of society, that is not how things work. Up until really the 2010s, I mean, before the internet started to be utilized in a way that it is today, most people, most professionals that were extremely, you know, that we would consider extremely successful, the 1%ers, they were in their 50s. They're in their late 40s, 50s, 60s. And if you look at their track record, if you look at their life, it was riddled with success and failure, success and failure, success and failure. And over time, they accumulated the knowledge, the ability, the business to finally get themselves into that place that they wanted to be. And we have this disjointed idea of well, I need to do the get rich quick scheme. I needed to create a code that's going to be sold to Google and then I'll be a billionaire. And it's just like, for the greater portion of us, those are things that we work towards over a course of a lifetime, not over the course of a summer.
Well, I mean, it could happen too.
Oh, it could happen. I'm not saying it can't happen,
Right.
but it's like, get realistic about your ability. Mark
Right.
Zuckerberg, I don't know if you've seen the guy. He's kind of an automaton. I mean, he looks like, I mean, seriously, he looks like a robot. It's clear that that guy, I mean, his eyes are sunken in his head. He's clearly, he codes all day long. That's what he talks about. He struggles with interactions with people.
Right.
I mean, there's memes about it. There's jokes about how he drinks water. He's like, dude's a robot. He's for sure a robot, you know, or Elon Musk even. Elon Musk has difficulty talking to people.
Yeah, his low, what is it? Emotional intelligence is pretty low. With
his
Elon
emotional
Musk.
his intelligence is possibly one of the highest that's ever existed in humanity. His emotional intelligence needs to be worked on.
You know, it's actually once again in my book that I've been well, it's an audiobook, so I've been listening to it, but it talks about, so it's that red characteristic type is what
Can we pause real quick?
Yeah.
How often do you listen to audiobooks and then you just pass it off as reading?
Okay, so
I do it all the time. I do it all the time.
I
I
don't-
say, well, this book I've been, reading, or this book I'm into, I usually say that because it's a great way to middle skirt it, because
Yeah.
I just feel like people judge me. They're like, oh yeah, he reads a lot. And then it's like, if you only knew, don't read that much. Listen to podcasts, audiobooks, TED Talks, all that kind of stuff.
So I usually say listening to. I'm a pretty transparent person, so like I'm listening to a book, you know. I do read books sometimes too, though. It's just a little bit more time consuming, so it's easy when I'm in my car, you know.
That's the problem with
Yeah.
It's easy to read books in your car.
No, it's easy to listen to books in my car.
While you're driving, it's like Google Maps up, listen to Pandora. No, I completely agree with you. It really comes down to when do I have time to read. But anyways, go ahead.
So yeah, so they define this red characteristic type, and that's like you're typified as like more aggressive, more successful, really bold, really ambitious, is okay being a leader, really doesn't have much fear, falls down, gets back up a lot, things like that, you know. And there's some other characteristics with that too. But it talks about they have low interest in personal relationship. That's one of the big characteristics of people that fit in this category, and that's kind of what
You said I was red yesterday, so I don't know where you're coming from.
Red and something, I don't know. Usually you're mixed in two different categories. Red's one of the actually more rare ones, but usually you'd fit in 85% of people fit into a mix of two categories, 10% fit into just one category, and 5% fit into three categories. So there's like red, blue, green, and yellow. And I'm like just kind of getting into it, so I haven't really learned about all the characteristics, but through those reds, it talks about something like those Steve Jobs, people like that, like those people, he said, the people you see that are extremely successful, those are mostly going to be red characters. The entrepreneurs make a great, those red character groups make great entrepreneurs, things like that, because they have a consistent result and goal-oriented mindset where they're like working sun up to sundown sort of thing. They're all day. They're just project on project. And I don't know, it's kind of an interesting character type. But I would say, like, when we're talking about things like that too, like you're saying, it's like, be realistic with yourself. If that's not who you are, that's okay. You know, like for me, I have no interest in creating some Fortune 500, like making millions of dollars. You know, one day
I don't want a yacht. I'm gonna be honest.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, if I could afford a yacht,
I'd like a tugboat.
I'd like a yacht that I can fish off of.
A rowboat.
But yeah, I mean, it's you know, and then there's other character types that people might fit into, and it's okay to fit into those. You know, like for me, I've talked about this a lot. My goal is to be a better person.
Mm-hmm.
Like I want to be internally good, and I want to be externally stable. I want to be able to maintain jobs. I want to be able to be reliable. I want to be full of integrity. I want to be there for people. I want to be compassionate. I want to be caring. I want to be giving, you know, but I also want to be assertive, and I want to have enough money to pay for what I need to pay for. I want to have a good job. I want to have an education so I can better help people. And that's like my goal in life, just to be a better human being. Maybe one day I can go even deeper into that and start, you know, like get more money and give to charity, stuff like that, give time to charities, things like that. And I mean, that's something that I'm really interested in. But that's my character. That's just who I am. But it's like, that's also scary to me as well. You know, like going to college, that's scary. You know, changing and looking internally and finding things, that's scary. It's like, figure out what you want, you know, figure out that area you want to strive in, and then be scared of it. That's fine, but do it anyways. You know, it's like fear is a natural part of our life. You know, it's a natural part of recovery. It's a natural part of really everything. Growth in general, it has fear in it. You know, I mean, other than some people, you might see them and they have no fear about the world. They're just like going. They're like, I don't care if I fail, I'm going to do it anyways. You know,
Mm-hmm.
Like there are people out there like that, but there's also people who are scared of it. And that's fine, but do it anyways. You know, assess the risk. If that's how you are, assess the risk. And if the risk outweighs the reward, don't do it. You know, but if the reward outweighs the the risk, if the risk isn't that bad, like, oh, well, I might get rejected. Who cares?
Might get rejected or if your biggest fear is rejection or judgment, then do it. I mean, honestly,
People are going to judge you anyways. You know what I'm saying?
regardless,
Like, I mean, there's people out there that are going to judge
that is their,
everybody they see.
yeah, that's their job. Like
Right.
whether you are successful, if you're successful, they'll call you, you know, for arrogant and you forgot where you came from, or you fail, you say, look, I knew they couldn't do it and they couldn't be up to snuff. There are just people that do that.
You grow internally and it's like, oh, you changed. And it's
Yeah.
like, yes, I did. Thank you.
Yeah,
You know?
I mean that's just a natural portion of life, and I think it's important to, you know, one of the problems in particular in our culture right now, and it is really unique to American culture, I think, is this consistent concept of talking kind of nature versus nurture. There is a cacophony of voices that are consistently saying like, well, you learn everything that you're going to be and who you are when you're younger, and when you get older, you know, that's just who you are. And it's like, I call BS. Honestly, I one thing that I've seen consistently, and I can speak experientially too, is that a lot of the things that I'm successful at now, a lot of my characteristics that I do, whether it's extroversion or whether it's being comfortable in front of a crowd or whatever, is I was afraid out of my mind to do those things. I was afraid out of my mind to get up in front of an audience and talk. And even the first couple of times I got up in front of an audience and did something, you know, I fell flat on my face. But the thing was I'm going to continue to do this. I'm going to continue. And guess what? I'm comfortable with it now. That's not to say that I don't get butterflies in my stomach every once in a while, but it feels like nothing to me. I'm in a crowd of 1,000 people, and just to grab a mic and basically tell them to sit down and shut up. Like it's I had to work towards that point. But the point that I'm trying to make is, you know, it is a constant labor of love. What do you want to be? What are the characteristics you would like to utilize? That's why many high level professionals that we would consider the wealthy elite in our society, you know, many of them suffer with high levels of agreeableness, and they have to go to therapists, and they have to go to trained clinicians and professionals to get assertiveness training, to get that training that, you know, they do repetitions with a clinician or whoever, or the professional, whoever it might be, to ask for the raise that they want, thinking, you know, I'm going to go ask for this raise in my worth. And they have all this anxiety and jitters because they've never really been assertive in that way.
I did that in real life. Look at that.
Yeah, no, but it's
every time I come in your office.
yeah, right. But exactly.
Where's my raise at?
Yeah, but that's something that I think is really important for young recoveries in particular. It's like, if you see characteristics that you find admirable, if you see characteristics that you would like to start utilizing in your own life, if you want to be a public speaker, or if you want to be a little bit more assertive, or if you don't want to let people walk over you or something like that, go get trained in it. Go find a place. One of the things that I tell, and I'm a mentor for pastors. I do a lot of consulting with different churches around the state of Michigan. But one of the things that I consistently tell preachers that are getting into this field is, first and foremost, when you went to seminary, they're going to teach you how to do and what to do and how to read scripture, all that kind of stuff. You know what they're not going to teach you? They're not going to give you an acting class. Go take an acting class. And people look at me and they say, well, what are you talking about? Why would I do that? It's like, first and foremost, if you take a decent acting class, and I don't care if it's at a community college, I don't care if it's at the university level, I don't care if it's at the community rec center with some guy that, you know, was a Class B actor and was in that commercial in that movie that one time.
Right.
Go take an acting class. And I tell them this because A, it's going to make you more comfortable. B, it's going to make you more comfortable in front of a crowd. And C, and I think this is most important, it's going to teach you inflection. It's going to teach you how to position yourself. It's going to teach you how to read a crowd. You know, Jordan Peterson, once again, he talks about this, where any one of his lectures that he does, he was in a conversation with a crowd. And what he means by that is, obviously I'm giving a lecture, but ultimately I'm responding to what people are doing. They're shifting in their seats. They're laughing. They're clearly engaged, leaning forward. And just that, you know, 90% of our communication is nonverbal. Just by reading a crowd like that and being able to indicate where the crowd is, and reading 1,000 people all at once, it allows him to have more engaging lectures. Now you might say, okay, how does that apply to a recovery or somebody who's new in recovery? It's like, it's the same exact principle. You have to get trained in the area that you want, especially if it relates to what you want out of life. If you want to be a successful business person, but you have no business fortitude, or you've never been in business before, go read. Go look at the people that are successful. If you're turning on, the Shark Tank every night and you're like, man, Mark Cuban, he's really successful. It's like, dude's written a lot of books. Go read what he has to say. He'll
Right.
tell you how we got there.
Isn't that the guy who's kind of rude?
But a little bit.
Yeah, I was trying. I was trying
I
to
believe
figure
he
out if that's
owns
who
the
it was.
Mavericks, I think. Yeah, he's
Unbelievably successful.
yeah,
Nonetheless.
unbelievable. Yeah, he's unbelievably successful. But it's like that's the point. Is if you're in early recovery and you want attributes that are what you think to be admirable, what you think to be like, wow, if I could instill that in my life, I'd be successful. Then go do it.
Right.
What does that look like? There are classes, seminars, books, TED Talks, YouTube, whatever it is. There are things out there to suit your fancy. And once again, we said this over the last couple of episodes, like get engaged with a group of people that are going to challenge you intellectually, because it's going to force you to think outside of the box.
Right.
And when you start doing that, you'll start to be a lot more successful, period.
Yeah. I mean, and I like what you said too, surrounding yourself. And I mean, challenge intellectually is probably something I would never use as a word, but because I'm not all intelligent myself, but
I read a book once.
yeah, I read one. So it was I listened to it. But
See what you did there.
yeah, so I mean, I surround myself with people I want to be like. I am a firm believer in you become who you hang out with. I've seen it over and over. It's like we talk about cultures. You end up becoming a part of the culture that you join. And there are smaller, I don't know if you call them like micro cultures inside of friend groups, inside of certain people, inside of certain groups, inside of other groups,
Subcultures. Okay.
Okay.
Whatever.
Yeah, micro cultures, I don't know, either way.
It's genetics or biology, but it's fine.
Yeah,
it's fine.
Yeah, like I said, I listened to a book once. All right.
Yeah.
But no, I would surround myself with those people. Like I was talking about when I went back to Iowa, I saw a lot of people that I used to hang out with that are doing better. Like they're not using the substance anymore.
Mm-hmm.
They're still doing the same thing.
Yep.
They're not moving forward in their life. It's like I saw those people, and I also saw. I do want to say, just in case the guy ends up listening, I'm not talking about the guy that I'm talking to, or that's not what I'm talking about. The guy I went to the meeting with and stuff like that. He's doing great. He's one of the people I used to use with and hang out with. He's doing amazing. I know he listens to the podcast. I thought about that after we said our last one. I'm like, I hope he doesn't think I was talking about him, because he's doing amazing. He's doing the right stuff. But I surround myself with people up here that are doing really, really big things in their life. They are steady progressing in their life. There's a goal. There's steps towards that goal every day. There's another goal. We've reached that goal, so now we're setting another one. And there's never a growing complacency in the people I surround myself with, because that is what I admire.
Yes.
I admire people who are always pushing forward in life. I don't care what they're pushing towards, like that. It's different for different people. Like I said, I just want to be a better human being. But like I find people who want to be better human beings too. I'm not going to hang out with someone who's just kind of like rude to people and, gets in fights and stuff like that. Like it's not someone I want to be around, because they're going nowhere in their life. But I want to hang out with people who are successfully learning how to manage their emotions, or starting to learn how to live in a recovery lifestyle, who are learning how to work in a real career, who are learning how to, get into college, who are starting to really like progress forward in their life step by step. And it's inspiring to me, because then, like you said, if I'm not doing the right thing, those people are the first ones to be like, what are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
Why are you not doing this thing? I had just the other day, a friend point out to me something. I don't really want to get into the whole details of it, but point out something that needs to be a goal I need to work on. It needs to be something that I need to start progressing in.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I'm a big believer in slow incremental change, but I'm at the point where I can start implementing new changes.
Yes.
So it's like, that's when I need to start working on next. And it's nice to have people around me like that are willing to tell me those things, willing to push me forward, and are doing the same things themselves. So it's not like a hypocritical voice.
Well, and I think it's multifaceted. One thing that I can speak to from personal experience, especially like in conversations that we had, is you need somebody that can recognize when you're stagnant in an area and tell you need to start working on it. Mm-hmm. And this is how you should go about it. Which brings me to the other point. I think being one myself and having had many in my lifetime, it's something that's underutilized in our culture, which is mentorship. You need to find somebody that has what you want. Then you need to ask them how they got it, and if they are willing, and give them permission to speak into your life on the things that you need to do to reorder your life to be able to be what you want, which is what they have. And I'm not saying that you're wanting everything that they got in a malicious way, but instead of like, I want to work towards where you're at now. Right. And one thing that ends up happening so often, especially when selecting a mentor, and this is something that you need to be very cautious about. It's not unlike picking a sponsor or whatever may have you. we've had conversations about sponsors that, people were going to pick, and then they're like, well, they kind of, and there's there's some weird little gray areas that are like, well, that's kind of weird. That's kind of weird. And then ultimately it's like, well, what they're saying doesn't match what they're doing. And I don't really want that. What they were saying sounded really good, but what they were doing is an entire problem
Right.
differently. When you're looking for a mentor, it's contrary to common sense as it might seem. You want to have somebody who is unbelievably busy, who may not have time to meet with you. And that might sound like, really, what are you talking about? Well, I want a mentor that can meet with me. It's like, if you are getting a mentor in an area that you want to start pursuing in, you want somebody that is so busy that they have to work you into a schedule. Because if you're getting a mentor that is not busy, or if you're getting a mentor that isn't, doesn't really have a schedule, and it's like, oh, okay, yeah, sure, whenever. Oh, no, it's based on your time, or whatever it might be, barring that they're not unbelievably successful. The reality is, that's not somebody that you probably want. I love to have mentors. When I call them, they say, like, I don't have time to talk to you right now. And it's like 2 seconds. Okay. And then they're like 5 minutes. They talk to me about a couple of things that are going on with them. They're like, okay, I got to get off the phone. I've got stuff going on. When it's just like, if you want something done, you give it to the busiest person in the room.
Right.
It's the same exact principle. If you want to get where you want to go, you find the busiest person and how they're getting there. And then you say, what is it going to take? And they're going to tell you. It's going to take sacrifice.
Mhm.
It's going to take times doing things that are contrary to what you want to do. You want to go out and have fun on Saturday? Well, guess what? You're going to be studying instead, because you have to work a 40-hour, 60-hour week. And the reality is, any time that you have to be cracking a book and getting there. And short-term sacrifice, long-term gain.
Yeah. See, that's why you're a red character group guy. Repeating back to my book that I'm listening to.
Read listening. I'm reading along.
Yes.
I'm following the bouncing ball.
Yeah. It's a sing along.
Yeah.
Sing along. But yeah, no, I mean, I think this is an interesting concept, because we started out this podcast talking about the fear of failure, or the fear of the unknown, rather. And it kind of turned into giving some advice of how to overcome that fear. And I think that's really good, because I feel like it's good to talk about like the solution to the problem. And I mean, I'd say, like, to kind of sum up what we've been talking, because I know we're getting towards the end of our time here, but kind of sum up what we're talking about. It's like, if you have a fear of that unknown, the first step is to walk towards it. I've always heard, if you don't know what to do, the hardest choice is inevitably the right one.
Yes.
And it's like that. There's a lot of truth to that. The one that scares you, do it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and obviously that doesn't make all facets of life. If you're scared about,
face that dragon.
I'm saying, if you're scared about not like paying your mortgage, you probably should be scared about not paying your mortgage, because there's repercussions for that. So I'm not saying that's a justify to be foolish, but like, if you're thinking about making a change and it's better for you, but your fear of not being able to do it anyways. And then if you still can't figure out how to do it, the next step would be find somebody in your life, somebody that you can look up to. It doesn't even have to be somebody right now. Find somebody that you can look up to, that has what you want, and ask them how they got it.
Yep.
That's what they say. That's what they say for sponsorship. That's what I was always told, is like, how do you know who you want to be your sponsor? It said, find somebody that you want what they have and ask them how they got it.
And I think there's a hard truth with that. And the hard truth is, they are more than likely going to say things that you don't want to hear.
Oh yeah. If you have a fear of judgment, you're going to have to overcome that if you want to change.
Well, and even at first, I think, because there are going to be people that you see that you want what they have, and you finally are able, you finally build up enough courage, enough momentum to ask them, and they say, okay, go back to school, get a 4-year education. And you're sitting there thinking, like, I can't do it. And it's like, stop there. Yes, you can. There's a difference between can't and I don't want to.
Mm-hmm. Or it seems hard, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah,
right?
Because the reality is, especially, there's not a successful person out there that I don't know of that didn't have to eke it out very difficultly. Once again, barring, the couple of teenagers that are successful on TikTok making $1 million driving around Ferraris. Like that.
I want to be that person.
Yeah, right. I want to be that person too. But
talking about that,
yeah, but it's like, barring them, most people had to work very, very closely. They had to work a lot of hours. They had to do things that they didn't want to do over and over and over again to finally achieve what they wanted to do. And that's the truth, is there's always going to be barriers in between you and what you want. It's how you interact with those barriers and how you remove them that is going to really make the difference.
Absolutely. It's always about constant strides forward, and then sacrifice,
Sacrifice. And I think that's with that, we are going to wrap up this podcast. So once again, every Monday we do the Science of Addiction. Every Wednesday we do meditations, and every Friday we interview. Thank you.